Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to address you today on a topic that lies at the heart of modern geopolitics: India's delicate and dynamic balancing of relations with three of the world's most powerful nations, China, Russia, and the United States. In an era defined by shifting alliances, economic interdependence, and new security challenges, India stands at a pivotal crossroads. Its ability to navigate the competing interests of these global powers while safeguarding its sovereignty and advancing its national interests has become one of the most significant diplomatic undertakings of the 21st century. India's foreign policy has always been guided by a combination of moral vision and pragmatic realism. Rooted in the principles of non-alignment, strategic autonomy, and multilateral cooperation, India's approach reflects both its civilizational heritage and its contemporary aspirations. As the world transitions from unipolarity to multipolarity, India finds itself as a central actor, a bridge between East and West, a voice for the global South, and a rising power that refuses to be confined within any single geopolitical camp. To understand India's current balancing act, we must first revisit its historical and ideological foundations. After achieving independence in 1947, India found itself in a bipolar world, divided between the United States-led Western Bloc and the Soviet-led Eastern Bloc. Under Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, India chose a path of non-alignment, advocating for an independent foreign policy that prioritized national sovereignty and global peace. This was not an act of neutrality or indecision, but a conscious effort to maintain flexibility and moral independence in a world driven by superpower rivalry. The non-aligned movement, NAM, became the cornerstone of this policy, allowing India to champion the causes of decolonization, disarmament, and economic development while maintaining relationships with both sides. During the Cold War, India leaned closer to the Soviet Union, largely because Moscow offered consistent support on key strategic issues. The Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace, Friendship, and Cooperation in 1971 was a turning point that ensured Soviet backing during the Bangladesh Liberation War, while also guaranteeing a steady supply of defense equipment and technology. At the same time, India's relations with the United States were often tense, marked by differing worldviews and Washington's close ties with Pakistan. Yet, even then, India never closed the door on dialogue or cooperation with the West. The end of the Cold War and the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991 transformed the global landscape and compelled India to adapt. Facing an economic crisis, India initiated sweeping reforms that liberalized its economy and opened it to global markets. This economic transformation, combined with the end of bipolarity, created new opportunities for engagement. The United States emerged as a key economic and technological partner, while Russia remained a crucial defense ally. Meanwhile, China's meteoric rise as an economic powerhouse introduced both opportunities and challenges for India's regional strategy. Today, India's foreign policy operates on a framework best described as multi-alignment, an evolution of the old non-alignment philosophy adapted to the realities of the 21st century. Rather than choosing sides, India engages with all major powers based on issue-specific interests. It cooperates with the United States in defense, trade, and technology, with Russia in energy and security, and with China in multilateral forums and economic initiatives, despite ongoing tensions. This multi-vector diplomacy is not indecision. It is strategic flexibility designed to preserve India's autonomy and maximize its global influence. Let us first examine India's relationship with the United States. Over the past 2 decades, the India-US partnership has grown from cautious engagement to a comprehensive strategic alliance. The landmark Civil Nuclear Agreement of 2005 was a turning point that symbolized a new era of trust. It recognized India as a responsible nuclear power despite its non-signature of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and opened the door for cooperation in defense, energy, and high technology. Today, the United States is one of India's largest trading partners, and their defense relationship has deepened through joint exercises like Yudh Abhyas, technology transfers, and the signing of foundational defense agreements such as Limoa, Comcasa, and Becker. The two nations share common interests in maintaining freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific, countering terrorism, and ensuring regional stability. The rise of the Quad, comprising India, the United States, Japan, and Australia, has further institutionalized this cooperation. However, India's approach to the United States remains nuanced. While it values the partnership, it remains cautious about being seen as part of an American-led alliance system. India's participation in the Quad is carefully framed as a cooperative, not confrontational mechanism, focused on humanitarian assistance, climate action, infrastructure, and supply chain resilience, rather than direct military confrontation. This allows India to align with the US, where interests converge while maintaining autonomy on issues like Iran, Russia, or trade policy where they diverge. Now, let us turn to China, a neighbor, competitor, and occasional partner. The India-China relationship is complex and multifaceted, marked by cooperation in multilateral platforms and competition across geopolitical, economic, and strategic dimensions. Both nations are ancient civilizations that have re-emerged as modern powers, yet their relationship is defined by a long and contested border, mutual suspicion, and competing visions for Asia's future. The 1962 border war remains a defining trauma in India's strategic consciousness. Despite efforts to normalize ties through agreements in the 1990s and 2000s, the boundary dispute remains unresolved. The standoff in Doklam in 2017 and the clashes in the Galwan Valley in 2020 shattered the fragile trust that had been built. These incidents underscored the reality that China views its relationship with India through the prism of strategic competition. Yet, paradoxically, China is also one of India's largest trading partners. Bilateral trade has grown exponentially, though heavily skewed in China's favor. India imports critical goods such as electronic components, machinery, and active pharmaceutical ingredients, while exporting raw materials and agricultural products. This economic interdependence makes complete decoupling impractical, even as India strives to diversify supply chains under its Atmanirbhar Bharat, Self-Reliant India initiative. Strategically, India is wary of China's growing footprint in South Asia and the Indian Ocean. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, particularly the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is viewed in New Delhi as an infringement on India's sovereignty and a strategic encirclement effort. In response, India has deepened cooperation with like-minded partners in the Indo-Pacific and invested in regional connectivity projects such as the International North-South Transport Corridor and the Chabahar port in Iran. However, India also continues to engage with China in platforms like BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the G20, recognizing that dialogue and diplomacy remain essential tools for conflict management. Turning to Russia, the relationship carries both historical depth and contemporary relevance. Russia has been a steadfast ally of India for over half a century, providing critical support when other powers turned away. Moscow supplied advanced defense technology, vetoed UN resolutions against India, and helped build its industrial base. The legacy of this cooperation endures today, with nearly 60% of India's military equipment originating from Russian designs. In recent years, however, the relationship has had to adapt to changing realities. Russia's growing alignment with China and its confrontation with the West following the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and again after the 2022 invasion of Ukraine have created challenges for India. While much of the West imposed sanctions on Russia, India chose a path of strategic neutrality, calling for peace while continuing to engage economically. India increased its imports of discounted Russian oil, cushioning its own economy amid global energy volatility while maintaining dialogue with both Moscow and Washington. This balancing act demonstrated India's diplomatic maturity. It was not a question of choosing sides, but of safeguarding national interests. India made it clear that it would not allow external pressures to dictate its decisions, a reflection of the same strategic autonomy that has defined its foreign policy since independence. Despite global tensions, India and Russia continue to cooperate in defense manufacturing, energy, space exploration, and the Arctic region. The S-400 air defense system deal and joint ventures like BrahMos are testament to the enduring nature of this partnership. As India manages these three critical relationships, it also seeks to expand its global footprint through leadership in multilateral diplomacy. Its presidency of the G20 in 2023 highlighted its role as a voice for the global South, focusing on equitable growth, digital inclusion, and climate responsibility. India's advocacy for reforming global institutions like the UN Security Council reflects its belief that international governance structures must adapt to the realities of a multipolar world. The underlying theme of India's diplomacy is not confrontation, but balance. This balance is not static. It is dynamic, evolving with the times and circumstances. It reflects India's ability to engage the United States as a strategic partner without alienating Russia as a trusted ally, and to manage competition with China without closing the door to dialogue. This ability to operate within contradictions, to balance idealism with realism, economic ambition with security concerns, is what makes India's foreign policy uniquely adaptive. Economic power forms the foundation of this diplomacy. India's rapidly growing economy, now among the top 5 in the world, provides it with leverage on the global stage. With a young population, expanding technological base, and robust democratic institutions, India projects stability in a world increasingly defined by uncertainty. Its partnerships with the US in innovation, with Russia in energy, and with China in trade reflect a multi-layered approach to growth and resilience. Moreover, India's civilizational ethos, rooted in the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, meaning the world is one family, underpins its global outlook. This principle informs its role as a humanitarian power, evident in its disaster relief efforts, peacekeeping missions, and vaccine diplomacy. India's foreign policy seeks not to dominate, but to cooperate, not to dictate, but to dialogue. In this light, India's balancing of relations among China, Russia, and the United States represents more than a strategic necessity. It is a philosophical statement. It asserts that global order should not be built on division, but on coexistence, not on zero-sum games, but on shared prosperity. As global challenges intensify, from climate change to technological disruption, from regional conflicts to economic inequality, India's approach offers an alternative model of leadership, pragmatic, inclusive, and responsible. The coming decades will test India's ability to maintain this balance amid rising US-China rivalry, Russia's ongoing confrontation with the West, and the evolving dynamics of the Indo-Pacific. Yet, India's history of navigating adversity with resilience provides confidence that it will continue to uphold its strategic autonomy while contributing constructively to global peace and stability. In the final analysis, India's role in world affairs is not that of a passive observer, but an active shaper of the global narrative. Its diplomacy reflects confidence born of civilizational continuity and modern strength. India does not seek to be a follower of any bloc. It aspires to be a leader in fostering dialogue, ensuring equity, and promoting peace. So, as we look toward the future, let us recognize the essence of India's geopolitical journey, a journey defined not by rigid alliances, but by flexible partnerships, not by subservience, but by sovereignty, not by confrontation, but by cooperation. India's balancing of relations with China, Russia, and the United States is not just about surviving in a competitive world. It is about shaping a future where balance, fairness, and respect guide international relations. It is about building a world order where nations rise together, not at each other's expense. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this reflection on India's evolving diplomacy and its remarkable balancing act, let us remember that true strength lies in balance, in the courage to engage, in the wisdom to adapt, and in the conviction to stand firm on principles even as the world changes around us. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, subscribe to our channel.